This episode of The Other Discovery Show is sponsored by Podcorn.
We're an independent podcast, and we wanted to know a way that we could start finding monetization for our show.
So we just started using Podcorn ourselves, and it has revolutionized our way of finding advertisers that fit our ethos and what we're all about.
Podcorn helps you match with advertisers that are looking for podcasts to do ad reads, interview segments, or topic discussions.
There's no middleman with Podcorn. You get to browse the advertisers and find which one feels right for your show. And then you get to collaborate with them directly.
The beauty of Podcorn is you don't have to give up any rights, and you're in complete control of who you choose to advertise for. So click the link in the show notes and start searching for the perfect advertising match for your show.
Thank you, Podcorn, for sponsoring this episode and for helping us find the right sponsors for our future shows. Welcome to The Other Discovery Show. It's the bonus show for the podcast Discovery Show, but instead of being about podcasts, it's about all of the other things that we've discovered throughout the week. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach.
And this week, I want to open up with a little bit of a downer. Okay, so bear with me. Don't turn off.
No, I'm prepared.
So I wanted to talk about how linguistics helped catch the Unabomber.
Okay.
So I saw this in a Today I Learned. It was actually an NPR. It was basically a transcript, I believe, of a Fresh Air episode, which is an NPR show.
Oh, okay.
So they interviewed people and things like that. So if you want to listen to that episode, I would recommend it. I haven't listened to it myself, but I read, the transcript and stuff. But this happened when we were really young.
Yeah, I do not have any memory of this happening.
I vaguely remember him getting caught, which makes sense, looking at this.
I remember pop culture references. Everybody, like, as soon as you had like a beard and more tracks, it was like, oh, there's a Unabomber. I remember the references to it, but I didn't have any context.
Yeah.
We were children.
So the Unabomber, there was 16 bombings over 17 years. That's a long time. I didn't know that. So you said you've looked into the
a little bit,
like you've seen a documentary or something like that.
I just looked into it a little bit. I wanted to understand why am I hearing all these references? Who is this guy?
Yeah, I want to watch like a documentary on it because I want to know the nitty gritty because there's so much. Because this guy got away with it for so long.
Yeah,
and the part that I want to nail down on this article is how meticulous he was at not getting caught. But then how the FBI did catch him, because that's what's so interesting.
Well, he had that fatal flaw of he had to.
We'll get there. So he killed 3 people and injured many others. And he always used the U.S. mail to send his homemade explosives, and that's how he became known as the Unabomber. So the FBI profiler, his name was James R. Fitzgerald. He went through extraordinary lengths to erase any trace of See, the Unabomber went through crazy lengths to, get rid of all of his evidence.
Sure.
Some of the stuff that they said that he got rid of is he would rip the skin off of batteries that he was using so that you wouldn't be able to trace it back to, the store or a brand or anything.
Wow.
So he would do that. This is the one that blew my mind. He avoided commercial glue. And instead, he made his own glue out of melted down deer hooves.
So honestly, okay, impressive is not the right word, but the dedication to being the worst is notable.
And the quote here from Fitzgerald, and of course, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing like that. So it's like, where does the FBI even start? This guy, he's making his own glue. Because he doesn't want us to be able to figure out, if he's using a specific kind that's sold more in this area than other areas.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, there's a lot of little things that our recommendation last TODS from Philip was about Don't F with Cats on Netflix. And that's a lot about little minute things that you're able to pinpoint somebody's identity from. And this guy, the Unabomber, was very good at keeping those away and thinking ahead for a lot of this stuff, which is crazy.
Well, once the amount of time he was doing it and the type of crime that he was committing, they would have found any possible way to identify him. So he was correct in assuming that anything you do that is at all a lead, they're going to try and find it.
And I'm pretty sure that he had gotten away with it for so long that he got very cocky about it.
It seems that way.
Because when he first started, he didn't send letters.
Yeah. He wasn't like flexing on everybody.
He started like sending letters and flexing, like you said, just kind of like sending letters to the media and talking even to the victims.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's messed up stuff. I mean, really messed up stuff. And eventually he sent a 35,000 word manifesto to the New York Times and the Washington Post.
I feel like as soon as the word manifesto is mentioned, that means it's like an insane person book. Because I'm trying to think of like this is a nice manifesto this genius wrote. Manifesto, I think, has that implication of it's not something anyone should read. It comes from the depths of an insane person.
So bear in mind, he got away with this for 17 years, right? He sent the manifesto in 1995, and he was caught in 96. He got away with it until he sent this stupid manifesto to all of these media outlets.
I will be honest. I'm curious what type of content's in the manifesto. Like, is it just his rantings about why he's doing this?
He hated like technology. He hated like the media.
That tracks because he like lived in like a weird hovel in the woods.
So Fitzgerald says the Unabomber's writings were a pivotal factor in cracking the case. He and his colleagues used them to help pinpoint the age, geographic origin of their suspect, and evidence that helped them to arrest him on April 6, 1996. That's when they arrested Ted Kaczynski, an ideologically motivated hermit living in a cabin in Montana. How long do you think he could have got away with it if he wouldn't have written that stupid manifesto?
Indefinitely.
It's insane.
It was like an off-grid cabin. He
That's
had no footprint.
It's I don't know. It's a crazy story, and this one today I learned made me want to learn more about. More than anything, I'm intrigued as to the process the FBI had to go through to figure out how they were going to catch this guy.
Yeah, and because
this is a domestic terrorist.
Yeah,
I mean, could you imagine being scared opening the mail?
That's literally what it was for 17 years, where you never know if the Unabomber is going to blow you up. And I'm sure they were trying so hard. Yeah, I'm sure there's amazing documentaries on this whole case. It's one of those things that it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing. It is, but it's interesting in a way.
It is. I like that they caught him. That's the thing.
I definitely like that.
And I like to know how the process of, the police chase and stuff like that. It's almost like what is that documentary, not documentary, but that show on Netflix, not Mastermind. What is it called? The one that has Jonathan Groff in it, and he's the actor. Oh, shoot, I can't remember it.
What, Mindhunter?
Mindhunter. Yeah, Mindhunter. Such a good show.
Yeah.
And they talk about like the Atlanta Monster and stuff like that on season 2. Oof. It's crazy.
Yeah, no,
I love that stuff. The psychology behind, what the FBI or other agencies have to try to figure out to pinpoint who somebody is.
Yeah, and the smallest details can literally be it. Because they talked about regional area and things like that. I'm sure he said something that was like colloquial or to some.
He said, I read a lot more in the article. I just want to read a whole article, but like to you guys. But he said Negro, which was out of term at the time. So
90s.
Yep, that got him into like a 50s, 60s was probably when he was growing up. Mm-hmm. It was like, so that was like somewhere around there. And then he would say chick and something else. Of course, all of this stuff was derogatory. Yeah, because he's a crazy man,
an insane person that lived in the
and
lived in the woods.
So he would say things like that, and so they were able to pinpoint. And I think he would mail from similar locations, so they knew he was somewhere in this giant circle of area, and so that's why they were able to find him, mainly because of the things that he wrote. In there, and his family were instrumental in helping find him.
Really?
Because they were like,
that sounds like him.
I think they called, exactly. They did. They basically called the FBI and they're like, this might be my uncle that lives in the woods.
I mean,
basically that's partially what
I always thought he was weird, but now I know for sure. But yeah, it's a crazy story completely. So this week I discovered that home-cooked meals are linked to higher diet quality. But
I almost brought this one.
oh, did you?
Yeah.
But low-income Americans still fall behind. So it's one of those things, it tracks. It makes sense. In general, if you're cooking at home, you're going to eat healthier than if you went out. I think that it's very difficult to eat healthy out. You have to make a conscious decision and do that. But they also, they did a poll and like 36% of people greater than 7 times a week. 13% of people, and this wasn't a huge study, it was like 10,000 people, but 13% never cooked at home at all, like 0 to 2 times, so maybe once. I don't know how you pull that off. I feel like you have to be rich or eating dollar menu to it's one of the two extremes.
There was a point when I was living with my dad and we were just kind of bachelors that we kind of ate out every single meal.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I mean,
you were a part
I remember
of that.
Yeah, I ate it at a lot of those meals. But so the things that you would think typically would like contribute to this, they make sense. So 65 years or older, Hispanic, foreign-born, had less than high school education, were unemployed, had lower household income, were married or living with a partner, had 4 or more people in their household, received SNAP benefits, or had less food security, they were more likely to be cooking at home a lot. So all these things track, like people that had to, they didn't have the money to go out.
It is cheaper.
Ate a lot.
It is. I mean, I know
home. It is cheaper.
Cognitive fact,
it's not close.
Empirical fact that it's cheaper to cook at home. I mean, it depends on what you're cooking. You can't have a porterhouse every night.
Yeah. No, but beans cost nothing,
Cook spaghetti once a week and then eat it for leftovers for 3 days.
Yeah. And I mean, you will hate spaghetti by the end of the week, but it's cheap. No, but basically what they did is they did this whole thing where they saw how many times you're eating at home. And then they ran it against a healthy eating index. And so my first thought is, what is a healthy eating index? Mm-hmm. This is an entire thing based off of the USDA's guide to how you should be eating. And I didn't know this existed. I can link it. It is a huge book. It is 144 pages. It's ridiculous. It's giant.
So it's a little bit longer than the food pyramid.
It is. It is. And
you learned in school.
I think that food pyramid is a little wonky at this point too.
Yeah, I think everyone's like, why did we teach this to our
but
kids?
I'll give you some bullet points. So follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. So in general, it's not about quick change. It's about longevity of those changes. Focus on variety, nutrient density, and amount. Because we know that as Americans, we eat very large portions and maybe we should scale back on that. Variety also is one of those things that helps you get all of the different things that you need. Limit calories from added sugars and saturated fats and reduce sodium intake. Another thing that it just kind of makes sense. And then try and make small changes that will help you shift away. So instead of drinking a soda, drink a water a day and you've started to shift it. Just make the changes you can make. And then also it's always included that like you try to make things better for everyone. And then also being physically active is always a part of this too. Beyond diet, having a good diet and then being active is how you do it. But then, so here is kind of, they break down a healthy eating pattern. Eat a variety of vegetables from all the subgroups, dark green, red and orange, legumes. And legumes are beans. Legumes. They're beans and peas, starchy and other. Fruits, especially whole fruits, which that means dried fruits are very high in sugar. You can eat a ton of them. They're not as good for you. You want the water. You want the fiber. And that's probably also has to do with juice. It would be my guess is why they specify that, because eating an orange is different than drinking a glass of orange juice. They're very different things. Grains, at least half of which are whole grains. Fat-free or low-fat dairy, milk, yogurt, cheese, or fortified soy beverages. And a variety of protein foods, seafood, lean meat, poultry, eggs, legumes, nuts, and then oils. And so, and they say the same thing about cutting fats and things like that. And it's basically about limiting the bad stuff. And so this is one of the things. Consume less than 10% of calories per day from added sugar, which I want to run the math.
That is very difficult.
But it gets rough.
In the United States.
It gets rough.
Guys, freaking sugar's in everything.
Because, okay, What's the average calories per day? I think it's like 2,000, right? Okay,
yeah.
average. So not if you're huge, not if you're working out all the time. Like there's a lot of variables, and honestly, 2,000 can be too much if you're small. There's variables, but average, we'll call it 2,000. So that means less than 200 sugars a day. But how much is in like one Mountain Dew? Like these things add up very quickly. If you eat a piece of cake, you're pushing it already. So it was really interesting to check out not only that it makes sense that low income families, they have less options. It's one of those things that there's programs designed to try and get them healthier food options. But then also I wanted to see what this healthy eating index was about. And so, they have an entire huge book telling you, here's what you should eat.
I will say this as well, though. I've learned that it is also, okay, so it's cheaper to eat at home than to eat out. But also, it is a lot cheaper to eat at home unhealthy than it is to eat at home healthily. You know what I mean? Like to get fresh vegetables, get fresh meat. You can get frozen food way cheaper. I mean, ramen noodles, they're like 2 cents a piece.
Yeah. No, and I think it's the same thing where it is much cheaper to go dollar menu than it is to cook well at home.
Yeah.
So there is some trouble there.
And so like there's still that fine line of like, yes, you can cook at home, but you still have to spend a little bit of extra money to be able to cook healthy.
I'll throw out a shout out to a really cool subreddit. It's called Eat Cheap and Healthy. Literally, that's the whole premise.
Never heard of it.
It's like budget, but also it's not terrible for you. Because, if you go get chicken tenders that are just meat processing plant, it doesn't really taste like chicken. It tastes like something.
You get a pack of pot pies, some pizza rolls, and, some
cheap.
Lunchables. And
it's cheap, but it's terrible for you.
Yeah.
And so the whole entire premise of this, and spoiler alert, there's a lot of beans. Because beans are very cheap, and then if you cook them, they're really good for you, and it's a win-win. But the whole premise of it is eating well, but for as cheap as possible. Eat cheap and healthy. It's a good subreddit. We'll throw it in the show notes.
I'm going to look into that one. All right, so that brings us to our correspondence. We're going to open up with our movie correspondent. We're going to you, Keith. What you got for us?
Gentlemen, it is KG from the Pop-Up Filmcast. I guess you're unofficial movie correspondent. Maybe I'm official. I don't know. But the movie correspondent. I'm calling in with another movie discovery for you and the PDS listeners. I had a flight to New York, and I got to check out a movie while I was on a flight called Peanut Butter Falcon. And it is about a guy with his own problems, and he runs into a guy with a 20-something-year-old gentleman with Down syndrome who is also on the run. He's escaped from the facility that he's at, and they're trying to get to... the Down syndrome guy is a fan of a professional wrestler. They're trying to get to that guy's wrestling camp, which is down in the middle of like the swamps someplace, and it's kind of their little journey together. So Shia LaBeouf is the lead, and I gotta say it's a fantastic movie. Fantastic maybe. It's a really good movie. Maybe fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was perfect that I was watching on a plane. It's only about an hour and 45 minutes long. You get a great performance out of Shia. The gentleman with Down syndrome gives an excellent performance as well. There's a couple cool cameos if you are a professional wrestling fan in the movie. But overall, really good stuff. I think you guys should check it out. I mentioned it to somebody else, and they were like, peanut butter what? So maybe not a lot of people know about this movie. Makes it perfect for a little discovery for people, for a PDS. Anyway, this is KG, and I'm out. Later.
First of all, Keith is for sure our official movie reviewer.
100% an official PDS correspondent.
Yeah. So if you don't know who Keith is the host of the Pop-Up Filmcast, an amazing show, a fun show. It is take improv mixed with like, I don't know, a film podcast essentially.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. We've been on the show a few times, and it's a great show. I think my favorite episodes, unfortunately, don't take this the wrong way, Zach. It's not the ones with us. It's been the ones with Phil and Nick. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
Gosh, I miss them. I will say that. They were great. They were so funny. Every time they've been on anything that's like improv wise, those guys are so quick witted.
Yeah.
It's so fun. So yeah, go check out Pop-Up Filmcast. But I've actually seen previews to this movie, but I didn't know it was out. It's one of those kind of like, is it an indie film
Yeah,
where it
it's
didn't
indie.
come out everywhere? It wasn't like advertised a lot, but I want to see it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to watch it.
No, that sounds good.
It sounds good. I've heard, good things about it. So thanks, Keith. And if you guys haven't heard about it and now you have, let us know on Twitter and go check out the movie. Let us know what you guys think. And I think that now we have a new correspondent for the first time calling in about a new animal fact.
Hey, fellas, it's Paul from the Varmints Podcast with a little animal fact. In the news this week, there are, of course, all the fires in Australia, and you may have seen the headline that said that wombats are herding animals and inviting them into their burrows in order to escape the wildfires in Australia. And that is not entirely true. Wombat burrows, they're big and they're extensive, and other animals and insects do use them from time to time. I guess somebody took a picture of some brown butterflies huddled in a wombat hole during the wildfires, and they said that the damp wombat hole was how they were surviving, which is probably true. Some wombats may themselves have survived by staying in their burrows, but here's the problem. Wombats don't like other animals in their burrows. Chances are if an animal like a koala, for instance, were to seek refuge in a wombat burrow, they would be chased right out. Wombats are very, very territorial, and they are heavy, furry, mean little bowling balls, and they don't want people in their burrows. Even if wombats were being somewhat altruistic, their eyesight is terrible, and they're doing well to get themselves into their little hidey holes. So the idea of them shepherding these animals and gathering together and bringing them into their burrows to be safe is just kind of nonsense. The animal rights group Greenpeace began this rumor on Instagram, and it went viral because Greenpeace. They love animals, right? Yeah, they've recently backed off on that claim. If you want to hear more about animals, you can listen to the Varmints Podcast right here on the Podfix Network. I am the host of that, and we actually have an episode about wombats coming up in the near future. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. We're super excited that now we have an animal correspondent.
Absolutely.
So he has an amazing show, as he talked about, the Varmints Podcast. I love listening to it, and now I've started listening to it with my kids, letting them learn a lot about different animals. And I've been reaching out to him for a long time to send us one of his facts, because he has so many. I'm like, come on, man, just give me a fact. And he finally did, so I'm excited, and I hope that we can continue having him call in with some amazing animal facts.
But yeah, if you haven't checked out Varmints, highly recommended. Great show. And now it's Kirk's story time.
So I have a story for you guys. I didn't have this on the itinerary to talk about, but
No, I did push for this story to be aired.
I'm just gonna tell the story, okay? Just I'm gonna throw all caution to the wind and just tell it. So, for some context, a long time ago, I used to have a fruit stand, and we had a website, and I made the big mistake, which has still been haunting me, of having my phone number, my personal cell phone number, as the contact for the website and for the fruit stand. Anyway, keep that in mind as I tell this story. So, I'm driving home from work one day, and you had gotten the call that day as well. Like, it was a weird
really
call,
weird call.
and you said it was like an old lady like yelling about something.
Well, she was mid conversation on some. I don't know. I don't
You're
understand.
like, who are you? I don't know who you are, and you like hung up. So I already had that in my brain. And so I'm driving home. So I'm trying to put this on you now.
It's my fault for sure.
So I'm driving home. Oh God, dang it!
No, it's too late. You must.
And this guy calls. He's got a little bit of an accent, and also his phone connection wasn't great. And all I hear is him saying, "Hey, you got any smut porn?" I'm like, "Wait, what, sir? What do you have? What? Do I have what? You got any smut porn?" I'm like, and I literally paused for a second. I'm like, "Oh, so this is a prank call. This guy's asking if I have any smut porn, and I don't know why, but this guy's calling me, and I can tell it's a New York number because my phone says New York. I want to play along a little bit. Like, yeah, I've got plenty." He's like, "Oh yeah, what kind you got?" And I'm like, "All kinds." And I mean, I was starting to get nervous, and I'm like, I hung up, and immediately I called Zach, and I'm like, hey Zach, this guy just called me, and he asked me if I had any smut porn. I'm like, "Did you get any, like," and I'm like, "Dude, he's calling me back right now. He's calling me back. He wants more smut porn." And I'm like, I was playing around with him, and I told him, yeah, I had plenty.
So he's like, "Oh yes."
So this guy called me back like 4 times, and Zach's like, "That's weird. That's funny. Ha ha ha." I just now told Zach because I was embarrassed. So he calls me back like 4 times. Eventually I answer it because I want to know, where did you get my phone number? That's what I wanted to know, is where the heck did you get my phone number? And so I answer the phone again. He's like, "Hey, what happened? We lost connection or something. You got any smut porn?" And I'm like,
he was dedicated to it.
I'm like, "Yes, I got the smut porn." And I'm trying to play along. I want to have a funny joke and whatever. And he's like, "Is it fresh?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's made to order." And that's when he's like, "Wait, what? What do you mean it's made to order?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's made to order." And I'm like, "Well, it was supposed to be funny. I play along. Come on. I'm playing in your space. You play in my space." And then I'm like, eventually I got fed up, and I'm like, "Where'd you get my phone number?" And he's like, "You're the produce stand, right?" And it hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, oh my God. This whole time, this guy this guy has been asking if I had any fresh shucked corn. He wanted to know if I had any fresh shucked corn, and I thought that he was asking for smut porn.
And then you just went with it. You're like, "Yeah, I got tons of porn."
So everything made sense until I said it's fresh made to order. He's like, "How do you fresh make to order shucked corn?
How do you make corn to order?"
And so, oh man, I immediately realized what was going on. I hung up the phone and I blocked his phone number.
That's maybe my favorite part, is that you're just like, "No, this has gone too far. There's no recovering from this. Your number is blocked."
Oh, I never wanted to tell that to anyone, and now I've told everyone.
Now to everyone. It's a great story.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry.
If you're listening, guy who really wanted corn, and Kirk just kept offering porn.
The funny thing is, I never answered with something that made it seem like I was saying porn. I was just like, "Yeah, I got some.
Oh yeah, I got it.
I got plenty."
So he was like, "Oh yes, finally, this guy's got some corn." And no, it was never going to happen for you, man. I'm very sorry.
By the way, if you know how to scrub your phone number off of Google somehow, please let me know, because I've tried so many times. Every time I'm like, "Oh, there it is," and I like take it off, and then I still get phone calls.
Yeah.
"Hey, you got fresh honey?" Dang it.
Yeah, it's tough. And also, PSA: don't put your phone number where people can Google your business and then find your personal cell phone number unless you're ready to get called indefinitely. Because, yeah, we haven't been at that produce stand for a long time now.
Like 5 years, maybe 6.
Plus, yeah, 5+. So, yeah. So, this week, I discovered through, I saw a Reddit thread of essentially, you always hear these stories of like James Bond and debonair people who get bored and want to commit crimes. Was there ever any historical basis for this? Was there debonair or suave, charismatic villains, outlaws? And there is. And one of the ones I found that was awesome and I wanted to talk about is named Black Bart. And Black Bart was born Charles Earl Bowles. And he became one of the most famous stagecoach robbers in American history. And it's partially because there is a lot of mythos around him that's awesome. So first of all, he was born in England. He came over during the California Gold Rush, and him and his family were prospectors, but it was also the late 1800s or mid 1800s. And so they got sick and died very easily. So he lost like both of his brothers. He then fought in the Civil War. He was injured and was like discharged by the end of it. And then he went back to prospecting, but this time in Idaho and Montana. And then he decided to start robbing stagecoaches. And so this is the late 1800s at this point. And he robbed at least 28 Wells Fargo stagecoaches.
So the thing that I like to think about, because nowadays we think of stagecoaches as like just having whatever, but basically they were like the Brinks trucks of the times. You know, they had money, they had valuables.
Well,
they had really cool.
Yeah, the Wells
shipments.
Fargo wagons was like the
Wells Fargo wagon is a.
They had stuff. It was a little like store essentially. They'd bring stuff to different towns when that wasn't something that was
prevalent.
But
they probably had a crap ton of money as well.
Yeah, and what they usually also had was armed guards. But
that's where the term shotgun came from.
It is. But okay, so there was a trail that went between California and Oregon, and he robbed 28 different stagecoaches.
Jeez. Successfully?
Yes. And he is known for being a very sophisticated robber. So he was invariably polite and did not ever use foul language despite its appearance in his poems. We'll get there in a second. He dressed in a long linen duster and a bowler hat and used a flour sack with holes cut in it for eyes. And then he had a shotgun, but he never used it. So a guy comes up to you with a flour sack over his head, but also wearing a hat and a duster and like...
Did you say flowers in his hat?
What? Flour sack.
Oh.
Flour sack.
I visualized him with a flowery hat.
No, he did not have a flowery hat. He had a bowler hat. So he had like a hat on top of a flour sack.
I got you. I got you.
All right, we're cleared up now. So here's his first robbery. In 1875, he found a stagecoach. He said, and apparently this is all, they took the word of the victims, he spoke in a deep and resonant tone as he politely ordered the stage driver, John Shine, to throw down the box. As Shine handed it over,
down the box.
As he handed it over, well, I mean, he's English, so it's probably like,
"Hey, you throw down the box."
That's something. That's an accent. and apparently, Black Bart said, "If he dares to shoot, give him a solid volley, boys."
If he dares to shoot, give him a solid volley, boys.
Oh, that's if he dares to shoot, give him a solid volley. It's turned into like Sean Connery.
All right, Sean Connery.
So they don't say that to me. That's where you were going. But he. And so then the stagecoach driver looks and he sees a bunch of rifles pointing out of the bushes. And so he's like, okay, so he like surrendered. He gave him over the strong box. And then Black Bart ran off. And then he went and checked out the area, and the men with rifles were just sticks that he had poked out of the bushes to like intimidate him.
That is genius.
And so he did a bunch of this stuff. And his last robbery and so basically throughout this whole time, he was very politely robbing people. He never killed anybody, but he robbed a lot of times. And so he kept doing this. And the last one, he actually was shot. They shot at him a bunch of times and he got shot and he ran away. And this was the last thing, because then he left like eyeglasses and he left personal effects. And so they tracked him down and they ended up arresting him, and he served 6 years, or he was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin, but he was released after 4. But because he had this whole reputation, the reporters were there and they're like, "Hey, are you going to go rob more stagecoaches?" And his quote was, "No, gentlemen, I'm through with crime," and he just smiled and walked off. And okay, one of the reasons that he became famous is because there was a couple times where
I'm glad this was a little bit after they hung every single person.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to lie, this guy seems like a bamf.
Yeah, he wasn't killing anybody.
It's one of those things. Yeah. It's like, I know he was doing bad stuff. It's like Robin Hood. It's like you kind of want him to. He was committing crimes, but you kind of want him to get away with it in some ways.
And There's one thing that he did that kind of also solidified him as like he was very nice, he was very polite, he was very well spoken, and then he also left 2 poems at these robberies. Like there was 2 of these robberies that he left a poem, and I'm going to read them. There is language in the first one. I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor and for riches, but on my corns too long you tread, you fine-haired sons of bitches. Okay, and then the other one that he left at a different robbery. Here I lay me down to sleep, to wait the coming morrow. Perhaps success, perhaps defeat, and everlasting sorrow. Let come what will, I'll try it on. My condition can't be worse. And if there's money in that box, 'tis money in my purse. And so
why didn't you do it in an English accent?
Because I can't do an English accent very well. I just can't do it. But the last thing I'll say about Black Bart, no one knows what happened to him.
What?
He left prison and he like retired. And I believe there's a whole lot of rumors and theories about what happened. So there's rumors that Wells Fargo paid him to go away and not steal from them anymore. Like it was costing them enough money that, okay, Wells Fargo's just like, just go away. But like they were concerned that he was going to do this. So he was released from prison and they're like, it's not good. He never went back to his wife after prison. He wrote to her in prison, but he just didn't do it. He was followed. Wells Fargo tracked him down because they're like, this guy is going to rob from us again. I can just feel it. They tracked him down and he was in a different country. They tracked him down to the hotel. The hotel owner said that somebody matching that description had checked in and then disappeared. The last time Black Bart was ever seen was February 28th, 1888. That's it. There's theories. Some people say he was in Japan. Some people say he went to Montana. The legend of Black Bart will never have an actual ending because no one knows.
That's crazy. It's like D.B. Cooper, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that story.
It's a wild one, but yeah, you should.
There's poems. There's robberies.
And
there's an English accent.
Yeah, here's Black Bart.
He looks like freaking Mark Twain.
He does. So definitely I will link this so you can check it out because it's a pretty awesome type of bad guy because he's just robbing stuff and leaving poems.
All right. So my last discovery this week is about the connection between dogs and man. I've always found it really interesting how, like, I don't know, there's something there between like a canine and its owner, or even just like you can almost communicate with a dog, even if it's a dog that you don't own, in nonverbal ways, and in, you know, there's just something there.
There definitely is.
So I found this article, and it talks about how stray dogs can understand human cues. And it was like a scientific study done. So a study revealed that about 80% of participating dogs successfully followed pointing gestures to a specific location despite having never received prior training. 80%. 80% of these dogs. The results suggested that dogs can understand complex gestures by simply watching humans, and this could have implications in reducing conflict between stray dogs and humans. So this was basically a study that was done on stray dogs. In the article, it says, dogs were domesticated 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, likely making them the oldest domesticated animal on the planet. And then they talk a lot about like breeding and stuff like that, and how we've kind of bred dogs to obey us better and perfect bred. To be honest, I saw another Today I Learned this week, and actually no, it was on the science subreddit, and it was about how this isn't this article, but it was about how wolves were able to learn how to play fetch extremely fast. Wild wolves that they had found and had in captivity were able to learn how to play fetch like almost immediately.
Yeah, and I think there is definitely something actually there. There's something actually there between the synergy between humans and dogs.
It's so weird. And it's like, I don't know, like I have a dog. He's a tiny little cute toy dog.
It's just like a wolf.
Just like a wolf. Just like a wolf. if you don't follow me on Twitter or Instagram, then you'll know that he's just like a wolf. But if you do,
it's
then
like
you know that
if
he's
a
not.
wolf were a 2-pound cotton ball. Yes, it's exactly like that.
But there is like this weird like connection. Like you'll tell him something, he's like, I know what you're saying, but I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah, no, the way that they look at you is definitely one of the things that has always been weird to me.
So the researchers approached solitary stray dogs, and they placed 2 covered bowls on the ground near them. A researcher would then point to one of the 2 bowls, and either momentarily or repeatedly. So they'd either point one time, or they'd point a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. And they recorded whether the dog approached the indicated bowl, and they also recorded the perceived emotional state of the dog during the experiment. What I'm not going to read a bunch of stuff about, but it was interesting. There was certain dogs that you could tell were kind of like abused and skittish. Those dogs didn't respond as well, but the ones that were a little bit more like open and like I guess happy, outgoing, those were the ones that kind of had. They picked up the nonverbal cues a lot quicker. So that was interesting.
I mean, the defensiveness is maybe why they were.
So I mean, it may have even been more than 80% if you take that like.
Yeah, the fear away.
Yeah, like that. I guess preconceived things that they were.
Trauma related. Outliers essentially.
So one of the researchers is quoted, "We thought it was quite amazing that the dogs could follow a gesture as abstract as momentary pointing. This means that they closely observed the human, whom they are meeting for the first time, and they use their understanding of humans to make a decision. This shows their intelligence and their adaptability." I just thought it was crazy that even stray dogs can learn to basically take nonverbal cues almost immediately. And also just, I thought it was an interesting discussion about how, I don't know, I feel like there is something even deeper about man and dog. I'm sorry for all the cat ladies out there that are like, what about kitty? But dogs have some sort of like, I swear there's something there, man. There's something primal there that it's...
No, and it probably came from a working relationship, is why it's more advanced. Because we've used dogs for hunting and for protection for a long, long time. And I mean, I've never heard of an attack cat. I mean, I guess it could be a thing. It's like guard cats, where as soon as you walk in, a bunch of cats attack your face. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. And dogs are great. And I do think there's something to that relationship. So for the final discovery of the week, I'm going to once again shamelessly plug my other show. But it's one of those things I really do feel like it's just an outlet for this show. It's where it came from. And it's just, I wanted to be able to talk more about the bands that I was discovering for this show.
Yeah, okay. Let me talk a little bit for a second about what Zach's done. So if you've been listening to the show for a while, Zach's been bringing a band discovery every single week for almost 2 years now. Because it's been about 2 years, and he has tens of bands. I think almost over 100, isn't there?
No, right now we're at 70, close to 75.
So, okay, 75 unique indie bands that, well, not all indie bands, but they're amazing bands that he's found through his discoveries. And he's reached out to every single one of them, gotten permission to be able to use their... That's the thing that a lot of people don't notice is there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes. There's a lot of bands that you've discovered that you weren't able to get permission for, correct?
Yes, and I will say this. I have a liked songs playlist on my Spotify, and it's got, I think, 3,000 songs in it. Yeah, I would say there's probably hundreds, like several hundred messages through... Facebook was the
so Zach's been doing so much work just to be able to give us our outro music for TODS, and and to bring his band discoveries, and he wanted to use that to be able to make a show because he's been having discussions with these bands to get permission, and so he's started this show called The Creator's Cove. And it's awesome. He's been able to go meet the bands sometimes if they're local, or he's talked to them over the internet. And he has really in-depth discussions about their creative, what inspires them, what started their creative endeavors, and what's leading them into the future. And I don't know, it's a really cool and amazing thing, and the PDS is behind you 100%. Like I said, I mean, he's gonna debut a new song right now, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of what got me started on the whole path of talking to local people. And we actually went to this show called Mountain Hauler and Friends that we've talked about, and all of this came from my first in-person interview with Mark Etherington. I've actually had him on as a Discovery before, but I wanted to do it again because his episode was just released today of The Creator's Cove, and on that episode is his new single that he literally just uploaded last night. So if you like this song, if you're interested at all, check out the new episode of Creator's Cove. It's got a brand new single on it. But the song I'm going to have here is one of my favorites of his. I've heard him play it live, and it's great, and it's called Canyons of Your Soul by Mountain Hauler. Thanks for listening. Hit us up on the Disco Hotline. I don't know what the number is, but it'll be in the show notes.
Yes, it will.
And we will include it maybe we should just throw it on our Facebook page too. We're going to put it out there. So if you're interested, if you want to tell us your discoveries, join our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club. Follow us on Twitter. Hit follow on Spotify. Give us a rating and review. Reach out. We want to hear from you. We want you to call in your discoveries to the Disco Hotline.
Yeah, so start rating and reviewing the show, because we have a giveaway, guys, and it's coming. If you start now, we're going to basically retroactively add that, as if you've left a review and you let us know who you are, we'll shout you out later on, and we will send you a free t-shirt and some stickers and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're about to have our merch come through.
Yeah, so we got some merch. It's already purchased. It's on its way from Neighborhood Print Shop, an amazing company that makes local stuff, but anybody can get their stuff on the internet. So yeah, if you have the ability to leave us a rating or review, please do so, and we would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy Canyons of Your Soul by Mountain Hauler.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
The devil walks through these halls. She sits next to you. Swaying to and fro, she talks to you. Claiming she'll save your soul, she lies to you. Devil sits in his home, he smiles at you. Laying there as hounds do moan, they cry for you. Crackling as fire grows, it smothers you. How can you ever grow when your mind is so enclosed? You will always say until you learn to let go. friends will gather round. They love you. Looking back on your lives, they will heal you. Sitting within the fog are clouds of you. Rising up from the smoke in shades of blue. Glowing in your eyes, a new view. And the waters will flow. The canopies will shade. And in the canyons of your soul, that's where you will be saved. And that's where you will be saved.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.